Hello, this is Cameron Merrill. This is my presentation on the summary of action rules. So action rules, as discussed in this module, are rules extracted from an information system that describes a possible transition of objects from one state to another with respect to a distinguished attribute called a decision attribute. There are three types of attributes to take into account when we're looking at action rules. Stable attributes are unchanging. Examples like dates, products that were purchased in a certain order. Um, there are also flexible attributes, attributes that may change over time. Example of that could be income, address, any attribute that is subject to change. And the decision attribute is ultimately the attribute that we're focused on with these action rules. It is a flexible attribute. And the thing to know about action rules is that they are actionable rules. And what that means is that they have actionability, which is a measure based on the rule's benefit to the user. That is, the user can do something to his or her interest with the rule. The practical implication of getting information is to improve the business. The information must ensure the success of the business for decision making, and actions can be performed to make the business succeed. So again, they're actionable rules, and they're not just acquiring knowledge, but they're acquiring actionable knowledge. And use knowledge is power. So for a business, action rules can be very useful as they're trying to make sure a certain outcome happens with the decision attribute. They can change they can change the flexible attributes as needed to make that happen. And here's an example of an action rule. So here we have our equation, and this means that if we change the value of a1 from v1 to c1, a1 being a variable here, uh, and these being the values of our variable, right? If we change it from v1 to c1 and the value of attribute a2 from v2 to c2, then the value of the decision attribute g will change from F1 to the desired value, which is F2. So this is kind of the logic behind it, and we can see some like business examples in the next slide. So these domain examples, for example, a dentist's office could have a decision attribute called is cavities. So that could be true or false based on whether they are found on that visit. And action rules could be discovered to find actionable ways to prevent patients from having cavities from coming in and to an appointment and having that cavities variable set to true. So variables like changing flossing regularly to true, or average brushes per day, changing that from 1 to 2. Um, those are things that might cause our decision attribute to go from cavities equal true to cavities equals false. So thinking of ways that a business can essentially change some other variables to affect the decision attribute is basically how they can be used in business. Action rules do have a cost, though, and it takes some understanding of the business processes that the action rules being implemented in to kind of understand the cost. But frequently, the cost is either monetary or moral. When taking any kind of action in a business, for example, moving an employee from one department to another, an action rule might say that would, increase productivity or some other some other decision variable, but it may cost morale from that employee as well as them possibly needing to relocate, and any financial costs on the company or employee with the move would be considered. Another example, an action could be to perform a number of surgeries on a patient, which would increase the likelihood of them beating a certain disease. But the cost of that could be whether those surgeries could negatively affect the patient's health, as well as the expense of all those surgeries. So again, it takes knowledge of the business, and uh, those different things need to be considered. Those costs need to be considered when deciding if an action rule should actually be acted upon. Um, the cost is denoted with a number from 0 to plus infinity, and it'll be close to 0 if the action is very easy to accomplish, essentially, and it'll be close to plus infinity if it's very difficult. Thank you.